I guess it would help if I added me to the stage. Hi, guys. Welcome to Weekly Travel Updates. I'm your host, Melinda Fargus. I own Action Travel. I've been doing this a few years, and I come to you weekly just so I can bring you what are the updates. Well, just before I got on, I always look at what are the critical weather situations. And I didn't have time to grab a YouTube, but you've got to look at what's going on in Austria. Hailstorms. I mean, you could see hail this big. Um, it was all over. Like the way I reported the mudslides and the crashing rivers flowing through everything in Southern California. Think of Austria. The Swiss Alps are covered with snow, and the weather that's coming in, the rain that's coming in. They're having hurricane force winds. You could see rivers of water that were making crash after car. Videos of people taking a video outside of their windows, and you could hear car alarms going off one after another, and it was just continuous. It's really scary. So be prayerful and thankful that you live somewhere that we're not going through that kind of catastrophe here in the U.S. today. What I wanted to share this week, one of the highlights is a story that we need to add prayer for too, and that is a Virginia couple who had saved all of their life, sold everything they had to buy a catamaran yacht. They just recently left. They were down in the Caribbean talking to their kids periodically, and no one had heard from them. It seems that 3 unidentified men have turned up with their yacht near Grenada, and that's not a good sign. One report said 3 pirate-looking men. Likely it's not a good situation, but pray for this family. It is Kathy Brundle and Ralph Henry, which is a couple out of Virginia. They're our neighbors, folks. We need to lift them up and pray that they threw them overboard and that somewhere they are out there surviving. I really pray for this family. I cannot imagine. Okay, and then a volcano has erupted in 50 miles southeast of Mexico City. They're calling it the El Popo. It's actually the most highly populated area away from Mexico City, and there's like a stoplight scale in Mexico, around Mexico City, that like we don't have here. We don't have raids or things like that, but it's a stoplight system. So for 6 to 8 months, there's been activity at the volcano, and they've been under yellow. And yellow is phase 2, meaning that the 25 million people who would be affected need to have a go plan. Like if you hear these sirens and church bells, all the ways that they keep in contact with people in that area. It's not like they all have cell phones, maybe in Mexico City, but not in this area. They have the stoplight system to say, hey, now it's nearing to a category, a red stoplight, meaning it's a phase 3, evacuate. There are already plans for evacuation, and the magna that's running underneath here, it's lava's kind of sticky when you see it flow. It doesn't just flow like water, and it's holding down all of this pressure. This particular volcano has had a massive eruption, which is called a Plinius explosion. And that's like what Mount St. Helens did, where it blew off part of the side of the mountain. It had not only ash, but debris in the clouds, enough ash that we had massive problems, flight delays, flight cancellations, people stranded. Mexico City, it would affect mainly southeast towards the Yucatan. It wouldn't quite make it that far to cause a problem, but flights in and out of Mexico City would be highly affected. In the last 1,000 years, this very volcano has erupted 3 times like that. And the locals fear that it's overdue. It's the year of death. When this happens, it affects the weather like any catastrophe would. But that's what they fear, is what would then happen to the weather. And all of the people who are south and east of Mexico City, the ash that forms is highly toxic. So think about them. They're in yellow right now, but if they move to green, then they'll be looking for evacuations. Okay, and then the next story is scary. So a Norwegian ship, the Norwegian Dawn, of the 19 ships that Norwegian has, this is the 4th oldest ship. And it was leaving South Africa. It was en route from Cape Town up the east coast of South Africa. The ship holds approximately 2,300 passengers and 1,000 crew members. So not a huge ship. But anyway, it gets near Madagascar, and it's actually called Mauritius. It's an island that they are supposed to port at, and they won't let them port. They won't let them disembark. There is a mysterious disease on board. They're not saying what. They've been testing for days now, and everybody's stranded on board. Everybody's confined to their cabin if they feel ill. The equivalent there out of Madagascar went on board, tested 15 different cabins, and they're waiting for results. Meanwhile, there are travelers that are waiting to board this ship, and these travelers can't get off to go home. I hope they have travel insurance, because think of the cost of changing all of those flights. It's already 2 days over. Norwegian is putting travelers who have flown in that were supposed to get on the ship this weekend, they're putting them up in accommodations, but likely not the kind of accommodations you'd get on board a ship, nor the food or service. Okay, and then we move down to, did you see the float plane that crashed this week? So it is coming in, if you boarded a ship in Miami, you've probably watched them come in. They land really near the cruise port and come parallel to some of the cruise ships. So as it was coming in, it flipped, and there were 7 passengers on board. It was a single engine Cessna. It looked like a really pretty plane. It was yellow, white, and gray. Anyway, it flipped over. All 7 passengers survived, were recovered quickly. because of so many onlookers, boats were right there to take care of the incident. But I'm sure that if you were boarding a ship or you're out on your balcony, that was a scary sight. When we go to Alaska this summer, I was telling one of my customers yesterday, when we go to Alaska this summer, we'll see float planes everywhere because 7 out of 10 people fly. There's a village, well, kind of like a gated community that is about an hour north of Anchorage. And it's over to the right of the railroad tracks as we're going up. And you just see a lake. It's about 12 acres in size, the lake is. And then there's like sprockets, driveways that come off of that lake and homes built. And Alaska is coming into the 20th century. They were brick homes and homes that had stone accents, tin roofs. I can remember when I started going to Alaska, let's just say years back, we could see homes and they would grow grass on their roofs, the roofs of their home, because it's a great insulator. When it rains, it waters it, it holds the water. Anyway, it's a whole different world. But this, to see a float plane crashing right in the Miami harbor must have been a frightful sight. And then, have you seen any updates to Skagway? We are going to Alaska. I'm taking a small group. We do have room for 4 people left. We are leaving July 2nd and we're coming back July 13th. Get home on the 14th. It's with Princess Cruise Line, and we're going to sail on the Royal Princess. We fly into Fairbanks and spend 2 nights at the Princess Lodge in Fairbanks. And then we go down to Denali, and we're going to stay at the Princess Lodge in Denali. And we'll go into the national park the next day. And then we'll get on the Alaska Railroad, one of the top 5 train trips in the world, and head to Whittier to catch the ship. It's going to be an exciting trip, guys. Would love for you to come. Anyway, we hope that what happened in Skagway this week will not affect us because we are going to Skagway. There, you remember the rock slides that happened last year. Tons of rocks came down the hill, damaging the pier. They made the ships go around port to it wasn't even really a pier. It was an industrial launch area for fishing boats, and they would bus people back into Skagway from there. Well, they had it all roped off, netted off. They can accommodate, I think, 4 ships right along the same old path that you've always been to if you've been to Skagway before. And they were bringing a floated pier that could accommodate 1 more ship in downtown. Imagine, you think, well, 6 ships in port, isn't that a bit much? Well, figure we're going on Princess. Princess has 8 ships in Alaska this year alone, just Princess. I know that Royal Caribbean has at least 4. I remember talking about this last year when I was telling you that the rock slide happened. There were 40 ships that were affected because a lady had jumped off board in a celebrity ship and it stopped all traffic. There were 40 ships that were either affected, headed south or headed north. With this issue of Skagway, people really want to go there. We didn't get to go there in September because of the delay in Seward. And it's like the old tiny West. It does make you feel like you can feel the gold rush days. No big buildings, still have the Western facades. The doctor show that was on many years ago about this young doctor who went to Alaska. Anyway, it was filmed right in Seward. So it's not Seward, Skagway. So it's a great place and you don't want to miss it. So I'm really hoping for it. A few other things that are taking place. I watch and listen and read a ton of stuff to prepare for this each week. And this week, kind of a sad week. I'm going to remove and when the commentator that I was reading said American Cruise Line, and I was like, oh, no, not American Cruise Line. American Cruise Line is one that does smaller rivers. They're really making a push across the U.S. because cruising is still the #1 mode of vacation. And it is the fastest growing mode of vacation. And so they want to take advantage of that, knowing that Americans like comfort, ease. Not everybody wants to fly across the ocean to get on a ship. And they want you to be able to experience that within the US. So they are building like 12 ships. And when I heard that they'd gone out of business, and I thought that it was America Cruise Line, not American Queen, I was afraid that that building all these ships had put them into bankruptcy. But have no fear. They do lots of rivers up and down the East Coast, West Coast, Snake River, all around the Mississippi. And while I will be sad that the Mississippi River Queen is going away, or at least for now, it's iconic. And you see a lot of like the Jackson Riverboat Cruise in Nashville. That's about half the size of the Mississippi Queen. And I don't know, it's just sad to see that. Hold on one second. I had to look at my notes. I dropped them on the floor and I wanted to make sure there was, what else was I supposed to tell you? I think I got sidetracked and didn't finish telling you about the Dawn. I did, because I didn't get down to these notes. The ship left Cape Town. The challenge with these cruise passengers is they have a mysterious disease. That's the way it's listed right now. I said that, 15 cabins have been tested, waiting for results to come back. But what is scary is the symptoms mimic cholera. And one YouTuber went as far to say that they fear that this is cholera. And we're not used to that. Cholera can be, corrected. But for travelers over 65, it can be life-threatening. So I know that I would not want to be on that side of the world. And while rehydrating people and things that you would take for like anti-diarrhea medicine, while it might be plenteous to get in other parts of the world, I would fear that, just off the coast of Africa in Madagascar, you might not have the plenteous supply to provide everybody on that ship for days and days and days. Not to mention, what are they going to do when they are allowed to come in? Man, by that time, the people who are there waiting, who are supposed to get on the ship, are still waiting. a good question was asked Saturday. An older couple came in, wanted to know about travel insurance. I'm going to address it right here because there would be trip interruption insurance for all of the people who are not on the ship yet. If your trip is not as you booked it, it's trip interruption. The people who are on the ship can file under travel delay because they were supposed to get off the ship 2 days ago and now they can't. So if you had the average policy that we sell, you'd have $500 per ticket to call that airline and say, we need to reschedule. We're on this Norwegian ship and we can't get off yet. And what do you have available for this weekend? And the challenge I fear is all of these travelers trying to get off the island area at one time. Likely when they fly in, because there's not that many flights into Madagascar, they came in different days. Some may have wanted to come 1 day earlier, 2 days early, because surely you wouldn't go that far and just get on a cruise ship, day one. So especially if the cruise line did your flights, no telling what kind of flights you got. And speaking of which, if the cruise line did your flights, they said that they will advise you by the 27th, which is tomorrow. If you were independently booked, like if you did your own airfare, or if you came early and stayed in Africa before or after the sailing, and it required you to do your own flight reservations, then they're giving free Wi-Fi and extra pursers down at the customer service desk to help you get reaccommodated, get to where you need to be. The big catastrophe in all of this would be if you didn't have travel insurance. Because if you didn't have travel insurance and you're off the coast of Madagascar, you cannot even call your airline to say, we're not being allowed in, and so I'm not going to make it to my flight. And so since you didn't cancel your flight prior to departure, you would lose the value of that ticket. And what they're saying is if you booked your flight and you called the airline and they can't reaccommodate you, and you called your insurance company and they were unable to help you, if you have no help at all, they'll give you $300 a person. Oh, and 15% off your next Norwegian cruise. Not sure that would be very much help coming from the Midwest of Africa. Wouldn't do it. Okay. Another cruise that have people sick is a canard ship. There's a canard ship that have 15 passengers on the Queen Victoria, which is brand new. They are sick, and it's a mysterious, 2 different cruise lines that have used that word this week, a mysterious sickness. So we're not sure what that is. But if it's on Canard, they're giving them the best service possible. Okay. The only other exciting thing I could tell you is that the Love Boat has decided they're going to do another sailing with the Love Boat crew. The Love Boat crew and the show itself were what actually spurred the interest in the U.S. for cruising in general, I think. And maybe I will do it. I'm not too, well, I have gone a bit long tonight. I'll do it anyway. Anyway, the Love Boat's going to do a sailing on August 31st out of New York City on the Enchanted Princess, and it's going to be a closed loop cruise. So if you don't have a passport, you can still go. It's only 4 days. It's going to leave New York City, go into Canada, and turn around and come back. would be a good time. And they're going to host a vow renewal on board. And if you ever wanted to have your vows renewed, you can do it on the Love Boat cruise, and the crew of the Love Boat are going to be there to witness and participate. I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, when I thought about the Love Boat, I thought about some things that are gone away from cruising. And I want to know if you will add things to this list down in the remarks. But 10 things that I can remember about cruising that are no more. Smoking. Smoking's the first thing. And now, when we started, there were people who smoked out on their balconies. You could sit out by the pool and smoke a cigarette. There were ashtrays everywhere. It just was not an issue at all. That's long gone away. And now it is deck specific, area specific, and even in the casino, area specific. So that's one thing. Another thing that has for sure gone away, and the pandemic took this away, was cruises to nowhere. Can you remember we used to have sailings that would be out of Charleston, and they'd be a cruise to nowhere for 3 days, and you just go out and experience the ship, and they would open the casinos, and it would be a big ship, all the regular food, shows, all that stuff. They are no longer allowed to do cruises to nowhere. Only by special authorization could you get it passed. It would have to be something catastrophic, like there's a hurricane and we were unable to port. So this is considered a cruise to nowhere. Okay. Then I thought this was funny. Do you remember watching Captain Stubing hitting golf balls off the back of the ship? Not like into a net, not biodegradable, just regular old golf balls. And I could remember when we first started cruising, you could hit golf balls off the back and you could skeet shoot. And skeet shooting, obviously, is another thing that's long gone away. And then they had guest talent shows. Well, you would always encourage people who were in your group, somebody's got to try out for the talent show. And, inevitably there would be somebody who would get up there and just really bomb. Well, these days they don't let you do that because they vet who's going to be in the talent show. And they don't call it a talent show anymore because it's basically singing. Back in the day, it could have been dancing or juggling or whatever. Ventriloquist. Not this day and time. It's mainly singing. And like on Princess, they have the something spectacular. And all the cruise lines have got karaoke bars, and that sort of thing. But gone are the days of a talent show. Then how about the bringing your guest on board? I can remember when I got in the travel business, the first cruise I went on, I was living in Los Angeles. And so we went out of San Pedro, and my stepmom went. One of my best friends who was going to drive her back home, she went with us. They went on board. We had a drink. When it was time for the ship to disembark, there were, like too loud, and it was time for everybody to disembark who were not traveling. And they trusted people to do that. That would never happen in this day and time. Nor do they let you anywhere past security unless you're a paid passenger. And then how about midnight buffets? It used to be a thing that on the captain's dinner night, which has become way more relaxed than it ever used to be, but on captain's dinner night, they'd have a midnight buffet. And my favorite was when they did the chocoholic buffet. Oh, everything you saw was chocolate. White chocolate, dark chocolate, milk chocolate. It was awesome. Anyway, but at midnight buffets, people would stand in a line forever. And the first time you went through, you only make pictures. You couldn't take anything off of it. We stood in line to make pictures. And then the next time, when everybody had been through, then you could go through and we actually got to eat what was on the buffet. But, you know, gone are those days. Lucky now, if you have a good travel agent who will tell you where you can find food late at night. Like, you can still find food. You can always find a burger somewhere, and do it without it costing you for room service. Okay, and I forgot to tell you about the midnight buffet. Ice sculptures. We would watch beside the pool somebody use a chainsaw and do this ice sculpture, and that would be the centerpiece that night. And there would be fruit centerpieces that would be 2 feet tall. The funniest thing I saw was on a recent cruise vlog. They were on a very old ship, and they had a buffet style, and it looked like it was supposed to be carved butter, but it was styrofoam, and it had been stepped on once or twice. Anyway, you could see the styrofoam coming out. That was pretty bad. Must have been a really old ship. Anyway, the last one, and with all the new ships coming out, I can't believe somebody won't do this, but the last one is inaugural sail-aways. You know, back in Love Boat days, when they left pier, they would throw thousands of streamers off the ship, and we make everything else biodegradable. I'm sure we could do streamers biodegradable right now, but they just don't do much like that anymore. So that's this week's information, guys. Let me know down below what's something else. Oh, I forgot one other thing. Topless sunbathing. I could just about tell when a guy was going to ask me what deck was the topless sunbathing on. And on Carnival, it used to be the top deck. The very top deck used to have it, but no more. Anyway, that is what is gone. Now, Virgin Voyages has an adult area that tops are optional, but that's the only one. Nobody else does that anymore. Okay, ciao, guys. See you later. Have a wonderful week. And remember, when you travel with a travel agent, because without a travel agent, you're on your own. See ya.